Welcome to the July 2018 breakfast. I see you guys love to eat because you don't want to go on vacation, I guess, so you want to be here. Unbelievable. Okay, let's see. First of all, I'd like to extend a good return for Mike, wherever you are. Mike Perloff.
He's over here hiding.
He's hiding. And Bill Roth, for some medical procedures that they had done. So welcome back. Great to see you. You should live to 120 and feel like only 60. Okay, before we start, are there any guests here?
Yes.
All right, why don't you just get up and talk for about a minute, give your name and a little bit about yourself, and tell us if you like to eat, because we got plenty to eat here.
Okay, well,
We got cold club.
if you see, I do like to eat. I'm Herb Magnus' son, Mike. Grew up in Cherry Hill, obviously, and currently live out in West Deptford.
Welcome.
Bill Furman, where are you, Bill?
Bill Toffel is a friend of mine, and he was instrumental being our guest speaker on Lemaine this morning. No, next month. He did not come to join the group, but tonight. So.
You never know.
Anybody else? Yes. Dan?
Bill, come on up. Oh. What would you like to know?
Everything, Dan. Where are you from? Where are you from? Cinnamon? Okay. Welcome. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Bill Furman, I'm originally from New York. I live in Charlton. I just got back from a trip from Israel.
Very good. All right. Anybody else?
Are you a Yankee fan?
Get out of here. They lost yesterday, you know.
They lost a lot recently.
Okay, make a mochi.
But they haven't lost.
We're going to ask for a volunteer to make a mochi.
Newest member.
Newest member.
Here he is. Yes, and he's first.
I will announce that then. That's good enough.
Yeah, I'm Jack Clark. I'm a new member, and I'm going to retire.
Who's our newest member here? Anybody want to volunteer to be the newest member? All right. Guys, before you run up, anybody who needs assistance, please go there first. 2 tables, both sides. Just a few quick announcements before the main program. You should have received an email regarding menches with wrenches. The Shaliach is coming from Israel, and they need JCC needs assistance in helping him move into his residence, and they're asking for assistance. Anybody who can move stuff with a car or hang pictures or whatever, miscellaneous things. It would be on Sunday, July 29th, between 10 and 12 o'clock. So if you're interested, please go on to the website of the JCC and sign up for it. It would be really appreciative of it. Okay, we'll just go through them in any random style. Fantasy football, Don?
Our fantasy football season is ready to get underway. We have our draft August 26th right here. Our league is growing and expanding. We have 12 teams, and we have interest in individuals to also come into the league. There's one person I know I was just approached that is looking to get into the league. So if there's an existing owner that is looking for a partner, if you'll see me at the end of the meeting, we can try to help out that individual. If you're interested in getting involved but you're not sure about how fantasy football works, we could possibly put you on as a monitor so that you could follow a team this year, get acclimated to how the process works, and then if there's an opportunity to take a team next year. I do see the possibility of going with 2 leagues next year because we're growing. We're close to 28 people now involved with fantasy football. It's really grown. Again, the waiting list I have, if anybody has any questions, see me at the end of the meeting. But our draft is August 26th. Everybody's welcome to attend the draft if you like, just to observe.
What time?
Let's see, that would be right after the meeting, so 11:30-ish. It'll be right after our regular general membership meeting. Any questions on fantasy football? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Don. By the way, you don't really have to know too much about football. You just have to follow the ambulance squad as all these players go down with injuries. Phil, would you like to talk about the cards?
Okay, just a reminder, everybody, that we have mitzvah cards available from the men's club. So whether you've got a simcha and you want to send a little note, or, God forbid you need a sympathy card, contribution is made to the South Jersey Men's Club with each card. They're $5. If you buy 5, you get 1 free. So $25, you get 6 cards, and on the back it explains a little bit about what's on the front, whether it's a hand on the wall or a star with a dove. And then if you want to be a real big shot, we've got $18 mitzvah cards, suitable for framing when you're done with it. Just let me know. We've got them here and available. You get the card and you get a stamped envelope. So $18 mitzvah cards, $5 mitzvah cards. Just let me know how many you want. Yes?
Yes, and I want to thank those who did send mitzvah cards, and for those that maybe I'll send something, maybe I won't. It really doesn't make a difference. It makes you feel better. So take that and use it.
It's nice, and it says that a generous contribution has been made in your honor to the South Jersey Men's Club on the back. So keep us in mind.
One of the main reasons for business that we're going to be doing right now is the bringing up of the bylaws. The bylaws have been looked at by the board. We've made suggested changes. In order for the bylaws to be accepted, it must be approved by a majority of the people here. So, Bob, would you like to present the changes? He's not going to go through every paragraph that's in the bylaws.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. With your notification of the meeting, you were sent a copy of the bylaws, which we're going to vote on today. Just so that give you a little synopsis of what's gone on. We have been revising the bylaws now actively with meetings for over a year. We started redoing the bylaws actually under Don Weisenstein. When Ed Silver became president, that responsibility went to him. On the bylaw committee, we had Don, we have Ed Silver, we have Ed Stein, who is the president-elect, and we have Marty Raffner, who is the president. It constituted the committee, and it was important that these people be on it. In addition to that, Dave Wynn and I were the scriveners, the people who took down what was said and wrote it all out. And then it was presented to the board. The reason why we had to redo the bylaws, things change. A simple example is that Don Weisenstein came up with a tremendous idea several years ago called the Taskmaster. We've since changed the name. Taskmaster was something that in the Jewish history we really don't want to have. So it was changed to Forum, which is Functions, Organization, Responsibility, User's Manual. What is it? It simply delineates under each of the positions the activities which that position is responsible for overlooking. Okay? Now, in the original bylaws, we used to spell out all of the functions under each of the board members, which was kind of ridiculous. It added like 4 or 5 pages. Since the forum changes as we needed to change, what we've done is just simply incorporated the forum by reference and eliminated all of the vice president of finance will do this and do that and do other. It's all in the forum. That way, it's a lot simpler. In addition to that, this club has been in existence now, Mike, what, 28 years now? We traditionally would put on the board past presidents, and they had voting rights. Well, if you do the math, there's soon to be more past presidents than elected members on the board, and the board thought that that was really not fair. You guys weren't being given a fair representation if past presidents could affect how things were done. So what we did was we eliminated the past presidents as voting members of the board. They are on the board for advisory purposes. Other than that, they're just there for that purpose. If a past president also took on another responsibility, such as Richie Moskowitz has, then he becomes a voting member. Other than that, we have 11 elected officials, and you guys elect them. Other than that, I think we should put it to the vote. All in favor of accepting the bylaws? Let the minutes show that it's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Marty?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Bob and I think Dave Wynn and some of the other people who were working week after week, month after month to get these bylaws changed and evaluated and worked on. They did a tremendous job. I want to thank them.
One thing about the forum. The forum is posted on the webpage, and anybody can look at it and see what's entailed. I'm sure there's some people here who are afraid to take on a potential task, whatever it may be. Well, if you go to look at the forum and pick a category and say, gee, I can do that, it'll only take me 20 minutes, for instance. I'm going to slice tomatoes in the kitchen, or I'm going to scoop herring out and stick it on a plate. I mean, it could be as basic as that. So if you get an opportunity, take a look at the forum on the webpage to see the various activities and what's entailed. It doesn't take very much to do some of these items. So. Okay. One last thing before I call Nelson for just an announcement. Starting next month, you'll be able to start paying your dues. Dues start, excuse me, I should say it this way. The new year starts for us in September. Dues payment should be between the months of September and November. Typically, most of the guys here, you come in, you drop a check in the envelope. If you're a little late, maybe you send it in the mail. You're going to have the opportunity to do it via the web. So not only will you pay your dues, but you'll get your mileage on your credit card. It's a lot easier, and bookkeeping is there. Your credit card number is not saved in anywhere because it actually finds its way through PayPal. You don't have to pay anything extra to absorb the credit card fees that we will be hit with. It's a way to do things easier for everybody. Okay, Nelson, would you like to give a brief announcement?
Thank you, Marty. Yeah, during my presentation on update of the military several months ago, you asked me to keep you up to date on certain things happening. Okay, as of last week, 2 more Jewish troops were killed in Afghanistan. Okay, 1 Army, 1 Marine, the names have not been released yet. Okay, we also had the recovery of the remains from somebody from World War II, 1944, that was killed in Europe, Jewish person. And as a result of the president going over to North Korea, of the 200 bodies that were released and people killed in 1953, okay, another Jewish person has been recovered and buried in California last week. Total number of Jews killed in Afghanistan and Iraq, and remember we have 35 combat operations going on within the world. Just in Iraq and Afghanistan, 75.
Nelson, do you have any update on the CH-53 helicopter crash where the pilot was killed, amongst other people?
I just happened to be at a briefing in New York City on Thursday night from a Vice Admiral. I think he pronounces his name as Szymanski. He's the highest ranking Jewish flag officer. And he was saying, somebody asked him that question about that as well as the collisions of the ship. And I was surprised how honest he was. It was the training. The example he gave for the collisions of the ship, and similar to what the Huey situation was, the captains in every one of the 4 ships that were in the collision were asleep at night, and the people in guard that were watching, I'm not from the Navy, whatever they called them, they were afraid to wake up the captains and say, we need a course change. They hopefully are correcting that now, but in the meantime, over 100 military were killed. We don't know how many really were killed. I think it's more than 100, but that's the situation. It's the training. We thought it was the dollars, sequestration, but it's really the training of the people.
Another question over there.
I don't think Marty wants me up here.
Can't stay good.
Yes.
Are they going to court-martial those people?
They reassigned them, and I suspect they are going to court-martial some of those people. The one person they already got rid of was a 2-star, actually he was a 3-star Vice Admiral, in charge of the Pacific Fleet, happens to be Jewish. They fired him because he's in charge of it. Yeah, but the other, the final reports, yes, I think they will court-martial some people. That's my opinion. But
Otherwise, the effect won't be a magnitude.
yeah, I think they will. But they have to go through a process. Yes, the final reports have not been issued yet.
Thank you, Nelson. Dave Schwartz, would you like to introduce our guest speaker?
Good morning. Tom Lemaine, thank you for coming this morning. We appreciate it. I have a little bio here. Tom Lemaine has over 40 years' experience as a sportscaster and on-air meteorologist in Philadelphia television, with a bachelor's degree from Fordham University and a master's from Drexel. Tom enlisted in the Navy and went to Aviation Officers Candidate School in Pensacola, where he earned his wings as a Navy carrier fighter pilot during the Vietnam era. Tom is a champion Western rider with his horse Sky King. A native of Atlantic City, currently he's chairman of the Atlantic City Board Walk Committee, executive board member of the Philadelphia Sports Riders Association, executive board member of the Atlantic City Waterfront Foundation, and vice president of Atlantic City's First Ward, and is a consultant for emergency management offices in the area. Welcome, Tom Lemaine.
And thanks for inviting me. Nelson, thank you for the update. Seems like we have a shortage of qualified senior officers in all branches of the military. Not only should the captain not be sleeping, when you're approaching a shipping lane, you should be on the deck.
You're exactly right, and that's what the Admiral said also.
Well, I agree with the Admiral. Well, as you heard from David's introduction, I kind of ran out of things to do, so I retired. I did. I've been very fortunate. I just accepted everything that came along. I didn't set out to do anything in particular. I was injured playing football in my freshman year of high school. They sent me up to the broadcast booth to help the play-by-play guy, and that's where my career began. I'm very fortunate that I never had to send out an audition tape. I never sent out an application. I wouldn't even know how to write a resume. I would have to get one of your legal guys to help me on that one.
Because they know how we...
Well, they do. When I graduated from high school, as you heard, I went to Fordham University in New York City. I applied to UCLA. I was accepted at UCLA, but I never thought I'd be accepted at Fordham. And I had my mind made up that I was going to go to UCLA. I love California. I was a surfer dude, and I was into all that because I was born and raised in Atlantic City on the beach. And but when Fordham accepted me, I said, California's still going to be there. I'll go to college in New York, and I don't regret that one bit. Of course, while I was in college, I had a 2S deferment, which meant that as soon as I graduated, I would be 1A. And I had already made up my mind that I was going to go to officer school. I said that if there was one time I was going to use my college degree, it was to be an officer in the Navy. Larry, lieutenant commander at our table there, we both served on aircraft carriers. While I was waiting to go to AOC, Aviation Officers Candidate School in Pensacola, actually I was qualified for OCS, Officers Candidate School. A Marine recruiter came into the radio station I was working at and said, "Would you like to fly?" And I said, "Sure, At the time, I thought, Navy pilots had to be an absolute perfect specimen, which I felt that I was far from, because there was bad eyes, bad ears. Matter of fact, I think back then, Larry, if you had a bad nose, you couldn't be an officer in the Navy, a flight officer anyway. So this Marine recruiter, he said, "I got a deal for you. If I set up a test up at Lakehurst Naval Air Station for a written test and a physical on the same day at your convenience, you'll sign this commitment sheet." Well, the commitment sheet I was signing was for the Marines, and I'm a Navy family. My dad's older brother was a Pearl Harbor survivor on the California, and both my dad and his younger brother, when they found out Pearl Harbor was bombed, they immediately ran down to the recruiting office and enlisted in the Navy. So I'm a Marine, so I'm going through Marine boot camp and the whole night, and I don't regret that one bit.
Don't regret it.
I'll tell you what, when I came back from boot camp, my mother said to me, when I went away, I was 12 pounds underweight, really, and I came back. Marines have a way of making you look different. So when I came back from on my first leave, my mother greeted me and she said, "Who are you and why are you talking so funny?" All my drill instructors were from the South. And when a Marine DI tells you how to do something, you not only do it the way he wants you to do it, you do it the way he says. And I picked up a Southern drawl that I had, to this day, have not been able to lose, because I was stationed in Pensacola, which is really southern Alabama, Corpus Christi, Texas, you name it. And fortunately, I was able to become a Navy fighter pilot. And I was telling the table, before that, I hadn't even flown a kite. And in 18 months, the Navy, well, by the way, I went down as a Marine, but since the Marines and the Navy cadets all trained in the same area, down at Pensacola, Florida, I was called into the CO office, and I was told that we had to fill Navy squadrons more than we needed to fill Marine squadrons, because, as it turned out, in Vietnam, the Navy squadrons had a very high attrition rate. And the CO said, "I understand you didn't do too well with helicopter aptitude test." And I said, "May I speak, sir?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I hate helicopters." So he said, "Well, most of the Marine squadrons are helicopter, and Navy squadrons, we can guarantee you fixed wing." So I switched to the Navy, which I wanted to be in the first place. So, again, fortunate happenstance. As I was telling the table, everything in life depends on when you were born. We were one of the first ones in. And back then we were advisors. In other words, the United States really wasn't supposed to have any active troops there until the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. And by the time the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was signed, my tour was up and I was out. Very fortunate, because I think if I had re-upped, I might not be here today talking to you guys. As I said, the Navy flyers had a very high attrition rate. Senator John McCain being one of them. The only thing John McCain and I had in common, we flew the same aircraft. We're on the same carrier. Never met the man, admire him, if only because of what he went through and his service to this country. Upon getting out of the military, you know, I always made up my mind that because of what my dad went through. My dad was in World War II when my brother was born. And he got a terse message saying, mother and child are okay. And my dad said, what did I have, a son or a daughter? And that was it. And, you know, today, you know, through the magic of technology, you can see your child being born even if you're in Afghanistan. You know, and actually he didn't see my brother because of the war until Larry was 6 months old. And I don't know how I would have been able to handle that. So I made up my mind that I was not going to get married or have a family until my military obligation was complete. And as a result, I didn't get married till I was 28 years old, which is old, I guess, for a lot of cases. But I was promised a job in broadcasting when I got out of the military, which they honored. And I finished my career at Atlantic City Radio Station, went to WIP in Philadelphia, and eventually Channel 3 in Philadelphia, where I put in almost 40 years. Yeah, I got away with it a long time. I figured it out before they figured me out. I started out as a sportscaster, as you heard Larry say, and had a very successful career with the teams in Philadelphia at that time. I also had a low part of the career when 76ers, remember one year they won 9 games and lost 73? I broadcast all 73 of those losses. I still hold the record for the most broadcast losses in one season. And I'm proud of that. You know, easy to broadcast a winning team, but damn hard to broadcast a team losing 73. But 10 years later, I was justly rewarded with a championship ring because I also broadcast the 76ers sweeping the Lakers in 4 games. So I went from the outhouse to the penthouse in 10 years. And in 1980, if you remember, all 4 teams went to the championship game. Do you all remember that? Oh, yeah. I was the sportscaster at Channel 3. I was the lead sports anchor at Channel 3 at that time. Sixers lost to the Lakers 6 games. Flyers lost to the Islanders in 6 games. The Phillies beat the Royals in 6 games. Eagles went to the Super Bowl 15, as a 10-point favorite against the Oakland Raiders and lost the game. And Tommy McDonald and I were broadcasting the game, and we were both on the field at the time down in New Orleans Superdome when both teams came out of the locker room, and I'm looking at the Raiders coming in to the field, loose, slap happy. I might have seen a couple of them on Bourbon Street the night before, because Raiders were kind of a team they really didn't take too kindly to what you call curfews. But Dick Vermeil, God bless him, I love the man. His team was coming out of the chute tighter than a guitar string. And I said to Tommy, does this look good? And Tommy was one of those carefree kind of players. He said, this doesn't look good. I don't like the way it turns out. Raiders won the game. However, I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. All 4 teams playing in the championship game in the same year. That's a pretty good trick. So, a few years later, I was called in to do the weather. I had done the 6 o'clock sports, Channel 3, and the news director said, we need somebody to do the weather at 11 and you're it. And I said, what made you think well, you're a Navy pilot. And I said, that's all military. Yeah, but you're the only guy here that might have a half-decent idea about the weather. They had sent, maybe half-assed idea about the weather. They had sent the regular weather guy down to cover a hurricane. And the news director felt that for the 11 o'clock news, they should have a weather presence. Well, the guy, if any of you remember Joe Whitty, He was a meteorologist, and when I went into the weather office, all these charts, we didn't call AccuWeather and say, what are we going to say? No, we had to do our own forecasting. So I approached it as a flight briefing. We can understand that, right? I said, I'm taking off from the carrier. I'm not going to be somewhere in the middle of the Pacific and be able to call weather and say, yo. So I did have that experience. And as it turned out, when the weathercaster went on vacation, they asked me to come back and do it again. So I was doing sports and weather until the mid-'80s, and they asked me, we got to make a decision here. I figured, you know what? I've done the Super Bowl. I got a championship ring. I broadcast all 4 teams in a championship game. Maybe I will try weather. If they're really that hard up for a weather guy, I said, one condition. I said, since I've done sports for 15 years, when I go on the air, people are going to say, how can I believe him about weather? He's a jock. So I made a deal with the station that I would go to Drexel and get my master's degree, and they paid for it. Well, if I had a 3-point GPA, they'd pay 100%. If I had a 2.5, they'd pay 80%, so forth. And they paid for the whole 9 years. But I wanted them to fill me going to college again and getting my degree. And also, I wanted to be able to do my own forecasting. I wanted to be able to, if I didn't believe what the National Weather Service was saying or AccuWeather, I wanted to be able to go on the air and say, this is what I think. You can believe me or not. And 2 years and 1 semester later, I had my master's in atmospheric science, and I stayed with weather until I decided I'm going to go out the front door before they show me the back. And I retired 6 years ago, is it now? 7? When you're retired, every day's Saturday, so but in my retirement, it has afforded me time to do work in Atlantic City to get my hometown back on track. And I'm on, as you heard in my introduction, I'm on several committees down there. And they listen to me, and that's fortunate. I pay attention to what ideas I have. I've been here, 10 minutes now? I've always thought that as much as I can say to any group that I'm addressing, I'm not going to be able to address questions and concerns maybe that y'all would like to have. So at this point, I'm opening it up to any questions at all, whatever topic, subjects you want to know, fire.
What do you think the future of Atlantic City's, what's going to happen down there?
Now, what do you think?
What?
What am I going to say? We're all going to hell in a handbasket? No, I really, it was a case of bad management in the city. I mean, there's no way that Atlantic City should have, for 30 years or more, exclusively gambling and to be broke. How does that happen? Well, we're making sure that doesn't happen again. I think after the whole dust settles with the so-called satellite gambling houses, Sugar House, whatever, you want to stay overnight in Bensalem, or do you want to stay overnight in Atlantic City? And I think Atlantic City, working on that premise, has a lot more to offer. And the 2 new casinos that opened, Hard Rock's like Wawa. They're not going to open up a place where they don't think they're going to succeed. Did you ever see a Wawa close only when they're going to open up a bigger one? Pardon me?
Only when you open up a superstore.
There you go. So that's to answer your question. That to me answers it more than anything I can say. The fact that Hard Rock has come in and said, we believe in Atlantic City. And the gentleman who took over the Ocean, the old rebel. So yes, I do. As impartial as I can be, yeah, it's bright. Yes, sir.
Did you hear about, I got 2 questions, the Trump Plaza being torn down, the old building being torn down? They're beautiful, constructed places. I'm shocked that they want to tear them down. And the second question is NASCAR racing would be great to get to Atlantic City. Have you heard? I heard about that rumors years ago.
No. Have you been in Trump Plaza lately? It's not beautiful. It's a dump. I mean, it's been in disrepair for a long time.
It's not open to the public.
And there's no room for them anymore. And I think, yes, eventually it will be torn down. When I was in high school, I was a stock car driver. I started out as an announcer. I was racing stock cars at Pleasantville Speedway before I had a driver's license. So if anybody's in favor of NASCAR coming to Atlantic City, you're looking at them.
Yeah, it needs another draw there, because gambling's all over the place.
We're working on it.
To have something else to attract.
We just got sports betting, so, you know, we're working on it, one thing at a time. Hey, wait a minute, if I had NASCAR or sports betting, what do I want? Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, but that's a good question. Yes, sir.
What years did you serve and you said you were in the scooter?
A4 Skyhawk,
Okay. What years did you?
62 to 65.
Okay. Did you ever come across John Glenn?
No, and nor did I ever meet the guy who broke the sound barrier. I mean, two of my heroes right there. But no, our paths never crossed. If I had stayed in the Navy, I was offered a chance to go into the space program. And I think if I had stayed in and survived, I probably would have. But, broadcasting was pretty good to me at that point. And I said, until I burn out this broadcasting thing and find out it's not for me, I'm going to stick with it. Well, I stuck with it for 50 years.
I understand your feeling about helicopters because I worked in Boeing for 40 years.
Mm-hmm. No, don't get me wrong. Helicopters could get where I couldn't get. They didn't. So it's just that I preferred fixed wing.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, sir.
Tom, what do you think about the way the whole weather TV business is going now? I think unless you're 5'6" and a female and especially well developed. Also, my wife's upset that every time she changes to another, how come it's 68 and 64 and 70?
I think you answered your own question. I mean, really.
The way they're located, I would say.
That's their chest special. Now, just a minute.
I'll tell you what. Let me put it this way. When I was discharged, I had a choice of going back into broadcasting or taking a full captainship with an airline and choosing my own routes. That's a pretty good deal, right? And back when the airlines, a lot more glamorous than they are now. Before, Mom and Pa Airlines came along and deregulation and all that. Don't get me wrong, I made the right decision. However, today, to answer your question, if I had the same choice today, I'd be driving a 757. And that's because of the way the broadcast business has gone since I left. Even before I left, I spent the last 5 years questioning management's decision. Why are we leading with this story? You want me to lead with flurries? Oh, Tom, you're not forecasting snow. No, I'm not. Well, Channel 10 and Channel 6 are. Okay. But I'm not. And snow sells. I'm sorry. I don't think it's going to snow. And I said, if Channel 10 and Channel 6 are forecasting snow, and I'm not forecasting snow, isn't the fact that it's not going to snow as big a story? If you think it's not going to snow, you're going to send the kids to school and you're going to go to work. If you think it's going to snow and you take the day off and you stay home with the kids and it doesn't, hello? She never questioned my forecast again because it never snowed. I think today, if you look at 4 stations' forecasts, and you can find a difference in any of those 4, let me know. Really.
A couple of degrees.
Yeah. Because you hear them talk about models.
Right.
The only model I want to talk about, she's about 5'8", she comes down the runway. But the models are forecast guidance, and they are guidance. They're not gospel. I put up a sign in the Channel 3 weather office that said, forecast models are guidance. They are not gospel. So I would lay out all the forecast models. If there was one that was different, it was the outlier, I would look at that one and say, oh, what does that, don't forget, forecast models are just computers, data in, data out. What did this forecast model see that none of the others did? and I would work on that. And if I thought that that outlier model had a good chance of being correct, I went with it. I might have been the outlier on the air, but because, as I said earlier, I was able to do my own forecasting. Yes, sir.
You got to see these franchises up close. I'll be specific with 1980. Was there any franchise where the players and the management had a special camaraderie? And if there was, do you think that makes a difference? Because I think when the Oakland A's were on fire, they were beating each other up before the games.
Well, I thought the camaraderie, Dallas Green, his way or the highway, but it worked. Dick Vermeil, absolute great. Every player that played for Dick Vermeil would go to the line for him. In the championship year, Billy Cunningham, he made it a point to, because he was such a great player, he went out of his way to draw the wall or the line between being a player and all his buddies to being the coach and separating himself from that, and it worked for Billy. Fred Shiro, Freddie the Fog, can't beat that, I think you can't get to where those teams went without having a good relationship with your manager. Jim Fregosi and the team from '93. He was like all those guys. And I would throw back guys, sit in the back, drink beers, smoke cigars, and just go out and play the hell out of baseball. I became good friends with Jerry Coleman, who, by the way, played for the Yankees. He was the only Major League Baseball player who saw combat. Now, there are others who served in 2 wars, but Jerry Coleman was the only Major League player who saw combat in both wars. And Jerry was a Marine Avenger fighter pilot in World War II and Korea. He once told me that when Mickey Mantle came up, the owners of the Yankees didn't want Mickey to get involved with some of the bad A guys like Billy Martin. So he said, the manager of the owner, actually, Del Webb of the Yankees, came up to Jerry Coleman and said, "Jerry, I want you to room with Mickey Mantle because this young kid coming up, I don't want him to have any bad influences, Jerry says, "Okay, fine." After a while, Jerry said, "I'd be in 11 o'clock at night, and Mickey would come in at 2 o'clock in the morning, barf in the toilet, and be sick as hell. He'd go out the next day and hit 3 for 4. I'd go 0 for 4. So I started doing what Mickey was doing. And an interesting point, of the 2 World Series ever between the Yankees and the Phillies, 1950 and 2009, right? Only time those 2 teams ever met in the World Series. Jerry Coleman was the most valuable player in the 1950 World Series because, believe it or not, the Yankees swept the Phillies in 4 games, but they only scored 11 runs. And Jerry Coleman knocked in 6 of them. So he was the MVP. Who was the MVP of the 2009 World Series between the Phillies and the Yankees? Who? Who? Let me give you something that's really ironic, and I don't mean to disrespect any organization, any nationality, any ethnic group. Jerry Coleman in World War II fought the Japanese. The 2009 most valuable player, Hideki Matsui. Thank you, Brenda. How's that for irony?
Yeah, that is irony.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about the Eagles this year and the Phillies?
I think they're the Super Bowl champs.
This year?
Huh?
You think they got a chance this year?
What other situation has there been where the most valuable player in the Super Bowl is the backup quarterback? Hey, you start right there with a pretty good. And also, whoever talks about the offensive line. At Philadelphia, and when I first took the job as a 76er broadcaster, one of my challenges was how am I going to tell Philadelphia sports fans what they don't already know? They are the most sophisticated basketball fans in the world, if only because they have the Big Five, which all 5 teams always are competitive. Penn, Temple, Villanova, whatever. One happens to be a national champion twice, right? So I think that sophistication among fans goes to the football team. Nowhere in the NFL do the fans talk about the offensive line. They're forgotten, those guys. Philadelphia has the best offensive line in football. So with a backup quarterback who's the MVP, it's hard to say that, isn't it? And a good offensive line, as tough as it is to repeat, I don't see anybody better than them. But then again, talk to me in February. I mean. Yes, sir.
I have to make a correction. Villanova's a 3-time national champion.
2 times.
5 last year and 3 years.
2 times in the last, I'm sorry, yeah, 3 times. You know, I'll tell you something though. Chris Ford, he and I went to high school together in Atlantic City. Chris Ford. By the way, he's the first guy to ever make a 3-point field goal. You know that? Chris Ford, when he was playing for the Detroit Pistons, was the first NBA player to make a 3-point field goal. Anyway, Chris, he played for the Detroit, and he was also a coach for the Sixers for a short time. His team, even though they didn't win a championship, his team took UCLA to the wire when UCLA was winning, what, 10, 12 national championships in a row, when John Wooden was the head coach and Bill Walton and those guys were playing for UCLA. To me, I can't deny a championship, but that team that took UCLA to the last minute of play and almost beat UCLA, to me, that achievement, I think, is on a par with any team that won a championship. That's just and I'm prejudiced because Chris Ford's a good friend of mine. We grew up together, but regardless, that was a pretty good achievement. Yes, sir.
When you first started out with basketball announcing, the game was obviously completely different. It was a team sport. Now it's a very individualistic sport. If you were doing broadcasting today versus when you first started, do you see yourself doing it completely different?
Well, you call the game the way you see it.
But it's so individual.
You know, and it goes for baseball as well. I was talking to, anybody see the All-Star game?
Yeah.
Right. How many ground balls were hit in the All-Star game? How many home runs were hit?
10.
You know, I was talking, just before he got fired, I hope I didn't put the jinx on him, but Mike Matheny, who was the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals, last time the Cardinals were in town, just before he was relieved of duty, I talked to him for a length after the game, and I said, Mike, I said, Greg Luzinski once led Major League Baseball with strikeouts. He was the strikeout leader. He had 160 strikeouts. There are guys who have more than 160 strikeouts at the All-Star break today. And I said, what do you attribute that to? And Mike Matheny said, launch angle. Everybody wants to hit the launch angle. High pitches. Hit them out of the ballpark. First time in Major League Baseball history, there are more strikeouts than hits. Now, what kind of a game would you like to see? I mean, you mentioned basketball. It's all 3 points now. You know, individual skills. Well, you know, what do you need to score a 3-point basket? You know, just be out in the open, beyond the line, beyond the arc. Baseball, same way. Everybody. And the home run hitter makes more money than the 330 hitter. One more. Any question I haven't heard yet? Yep.
First, I want to thank you for your efforts on behalf of Atlantic City. I've been married to an Atlantic City girl 60 years.
Where's she from?
To North Newton Avenue. Last stop in Atlantic City.
Oh, before you get into Ventnor.
Before we get into that.
Yeah.
And we were with friends. She graduated high school. And in our day, when there was a fire or an ambulance, all the lights would blink on Ventnor Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. You had to pull over to the side. And my grandchildren are all in their 20s. They've been through their college and everything. And we were talking about prom night. And when I took my wife to her prom, I was in South Philadelphia. I didn't know how the hell I was going to afford to take her because I had to take a bus there. The city paid for everything. The entire class was taken to the 500 Club.
Mm-hmm. That's where we went, yeah.
The entire grade class was taken to, I think it was the movie about Hawaii. They turned the city over to, we were drag racing on Atlantic Avenue. Okay? Now, you can't walk up Atlantic Avenue today without a separate sheet up. But I think...
Whoa, 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 whoa. Larry, when am I supposed to leave, Larry?
There's been a big improvement.
I want to tell you something.
What you guys have done is...
Yeah, well, you know what? I went to Holy Spirit High School. I could walk there because, you know, my mother went to Holy Spirit High School. I want to tell you, the worst thing you can have is a teacher who taught your mom. Especially if your mom was valedictorian. So I said, yo, cut me a slack. I can't, you know. However, at the prom, my junior prom, you know, the nuns are, that's like a review file, right? The nuns are always there to inspect who you're with and how your date is dressed. And they say, oh, a little too low there, right? Okay, you know. And in my junior year, I took a nice Jewish girl from Margate to the prom. And when I walked through that reviewing line, the nuns were going, like, what's the matter? Couldn't you take a nice Catholic girl to the prom? I said the Catholic girls didn't want to go with me to the prom. So that reminded me of the prom. And we did go to the 500 Club afterwards.
It was just amazing, and I see a lot of them coming back.
Oh, yeah.
They take rides, their
Yep.
friends that still live down there. And the resurgence is just amazing, because the city has...
You don't need a submachine gun anymore.
No, not anymore.
Sidearm will do.
Before you got involved, okay?
Yeah.
And it is amazing to see properties being sold like that, and for a lot...
Well, I had a chance 15 years ago. I was walking through my old neighborhood. It was rubble. My house I was born in was torn down, and it was just bricks and everything. But I saw a sign that said something was going to be developed, and I happened to see the contractor, guy with the white hat. And what's going on? We're building homes here. I said, I'll take one. Well, we don't even, I said, fine. I said, is this going to be, he said, I said, I was born here. You were born in Atlantic City? I said, no, sir. I was born right here. Is this lot available? Well, yeah. So I gave him a down payment, Block 94, Lot 1. 2 years later, the house was built. And to me, because when my folks left the inlet, it was like, last one, turn out the lights. And my dad said, you know, neighborhood's gone pretty bad right now, but that ocean's still going to be there, son. And that same ocean is where I am right now. New home. How many guys can do that? I mean, I could have had the same exact address. However, they rearranged the lots so that I had a corner lot instead of an mid-block lot. So I'm back. Yes, sir. We okay, Lyra? Anybody got to go somewhere? Am I okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I've been driving for the Miss America parade.
God bless you, sir. One of the volunteers. Let me shake your hand.
I also put Miss America 2 years ago. Yep, you can't trail. So, what do you think about removing the bathing suit portion? I think it's terrible.
That's one thing on ABC.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Is anybody besides Gretchen Carlson in favor of that? Everybody I've talked to, and by the way, thank you for your volunteer service. Any of the volunteers that I talked to who have volunteered their services to the Miss America pageant for 30, 40 years, they don't want to see change.
I don't want it either.
There you go. And, you know, we fought like hell to get the Miss America pageant back to Atlantic City.
And it's a beauty contest.
Don't ripple the water. Well,
It's a beauty contest.
it is, well, whatever you want to call it, pageant, contest, it remains unique, far and above any other contests or talent shows that are on television. You want to make it like America's Got Talent? Go ahead, you know. But if you want to keep it distinct, as it always has been, and in honor of those who put in a lot of volunteer years, leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Thank you. Go tell them.
I have. Yes, sir.
Tying together your weather and sports, in view of the weather, are the Phillies going to be able to play the games that got scheduled over next week?
Well, let's see. We got a high pressure area here, and it's moving offshore, and there's a string. You know what?
Hey, the guy's never going to come back.
As soon as I went to the game on Friday night, First thing I said to all the employees as I walked in, be prepared to play a doubleheader on Sunday. That's all I can tell them. And because it's San Diego, they'll get those games in tonight, one way or the other, because San Diego ain't coming back. They only play them once.
Yeah.
So if it was the Mets or a team they play 16 times, 12 times a year too. By the way, Phillies aren't going to be in town this week after the Dodgers, so could be away. Yes, somebody didn't ask a question here. Yeah, I work with your wife, so you have. There's no questions that you can't answer. Yes, sir.
I'm very curious. Somebody said that when you're doing the weather, you're in front of a green screen. You can't see what's on there. We can. So what are you looking at? It looks like the people are looking at the screen.
Monitors.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, I can see what you're seeing with a monitor.
Is that what it is? So you're looking at the monitor while you're
Yeah, you
looking at the screen.
you kind of get used to that. And after a while, you're going like this.
It looks like they're looking right at that screen. I said, but this must be...
That's how good we are. Fooled you, didn't we? Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. One more.
I was curious, since your military background, about this national anthem controversy. Is it ever going to end?
I don't like to mix politics with sports. Leave it alone. The only knee you should... Pardon me?
They've already done it.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll see how that shakes out. But I don't think, in the case of the NFL, I don't think the majority rules. If you ask any of the people who go to an Eagles football game, any of that 60,000, they don't want to see that. Play the frickin' game. Get that stuff to another platform. Not when I'm coming to see a football game. That's all. And by the way, anytime you take a knee, it's at a cemetery. You take a knee in front of that stone that says he gallantly served. That's the only time I take a knee.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. Throw it out now.
We need you for a little bit of a service. You got to pick a winner.
Oh, okay.
Take a picture.
All right.
Take a picture.
Order up.
And a presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Yeah, I got this guy right here. Okay.
50-50.
This guy looks like Vince Papale, doesn't he?
Pick a number.
Invincible. You could have doubled for him. What am I doing with this bag?
You're going to pick a number.
Pick a winner. Oh, yeah. My number's not in there. I didn't buy it.
Oh, you got the pick?
No.
Here's a number.
Oh. You guys are bad. There it is.
All right. Last three digits are 094.
Right here.
There you go.
Oh, Rob, thank you again very much.
Only because you married an Atlantic City girl.
Money's in the bag.
Money's in the bag.
All right, tell them on whatever the amount is, money is donated back to the JCC Food Bank, where the lunches are held every day. My buddy here and I have been doing this now for a couple of years. This is our fourth time between here and the Couples Club this year. You say it was $1,000? Who's got the money?
In case you haven't heard, it's in here.
It's in the Rob. It's in the bag.
Rob is donating it to the food. Rob and Herb Magnus are donating it to the food program that's held here every day at the JCC.
$56. Oh, $56. All right, I'm taking it down to shore. I'm not sure yet.